Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the MMA On Point live chat. Hope you guys are doing okay. It is a very beautiful Wednesday here in Nashville, Tennessee. I mean, I guess it's all right, whatever. I think my voice cracked a little bit there. You can give me some credit there. Everyone give me some brownie points there. I hope you guys are doing all right. So I want to just jump right into today's topic. We've got kind of a shakeup going on in the light heavyweight division. I think it's really weird. I think it's really kind of strange, but also kind of awesome at the same time. Like, I really want Jon Jones to face Dominic Reyes again. I don't want him to move up. Oh, they're saying they can't hear me? Or are people messing with me? Can you hear me? Did you have me muted? Oh, yeah. I can hear you back, actually, on your headphones. So I think people are trolling me there. Yeah, so I think it's really kind of strange. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, guys. People are saying we can hear you. You trolls, dude. Trolls are the worst. Appreciate you guys. Somebody actually got me. From now on, I just won't read the comments for like the first 30 seconds and let you tell me if you can't hear me. But anyhow, I think it's really weird / really strange, but also kind of awesome. Like, I really wanted the rematch with Jon Jones versus Dominic Reyes too. I think that made the most sense in the world. But it's a nice consolation prize to see Reyes get to fight for a title and not have to wait on Jones anymore. Ooh, there we go. I just chugged some coffee right before this, so a little belchy. But so on top of that, we've got Jan getting his shot as well. You know, I feel like they both deserve their title shots. I mean, Jan's knockout. So I was there earlier this year, the one over Corey Anderson. Really, really, really impressive finish there, especially when you watch the first fight between Jan Blachowicz and Corey Anderson. Like, Corey just dominated him with wrestling. This time, Jan was ready and just starched him on the feet, just knocked him out cold. And he's been stopping everybody. You know, he's been an underdog in the Luke Rockhold fight as well. You know, like it feels like Jan has kind of done what Thiago Santos did. And ironically, he lost to Thiago Santos. It's almost like he's started starching all these people after kind of coming back. Anthony Smith went through the same thing. It's almost like light heavyweight is really starting to look like heavyweight in the sense that we're seeing these career-long veterans have this surge later on in their career. Where early on, it's almost like you start to count them out because you see them lose so many times. You know, like the Corey Anderson loss with Jan Blachowicz, Thiago Santos, you know, like you're seeing these losses from Jan, and then all of a sudden you just kind of see him come back in his later years. He's a little bit smarter, and somehow his knockout power is just unbelievably good. So, yeah, it's really, really, really interesting. And so I'm happy for them on that front, but I really wanted Dominic Reyes versus Jon Jones. I think the vast majority of people thought that Jon Jones lost that fight. You know, I was there for that fight. I was at UFC 248. I was there in the media room. All the media people thought that Jon Jones lost that fight, absent 2 or 3 people. One of the people that I know, my friend Jay Petrie from SureDog, he said that he now believes that Jon Jones won or lost that fight. In person, he thought Jon Jones won, and he reviewed it, and he was like, no, Reyes won that fight. So why aren't we getting that? That's a bit disappointing. And Dana White's gone on record to say that he believes Ngannou should get the title fight before Jon Jones, and I fully agree with that. We should totally be having Ngannou get the title shot. I mean, we thought he was going to get a title shot back when he beat Cain Velasquez. That's what we were talking about back then. But then he beat Curtis Blaydes, so we thought we were going to get it after Curtis Blaydes. That's the second time, by the way. And then he's, you know, had more fights even in between then, including beating Rosenstruck and just knocking the dude out cold, you know. So I'm 100% on board with these guys getting their due, but I really wish we were getting Jon Jones versus Dominic Reyes, and I do think that Ngannou deserves the title shot before that. So that being said, I'm kind of curious to get your thoughts on this entire subject matter. What do you guys think about this? Are you stoked for this title fight? Do you feel like Jan Blachowicz versus Dominic Reyes is a great fight? Are you excited about it? It's on UFC 253, so I mean, we're talking about putting this as a co-main event under Israel Adesanya and Costa, which is just amazing. I think this is going to be a really good main card. I am stoked for UFC 253 now. So let me see what you guys think. He did lose that fight, says Justin Newstead, so he agrees that Jon Jones lost the fight. Reyes definitely won, says Josh on Journey. Angel Martinez, I miss the Montage King where they were the original MMA Point. I miss those dudes too. I've actually reached out to them for doing a collab, but they have just totally disappeared off the scene. I'm a fan of Montage King. If they were still around, I would totally do a collab with them. John Jones versus Reyes 2 is a no thanks for the numbers. Wait, it's a no thanks for the numbers? Wouldn't that be the most anticipated title fight for John Jones other than Stipe and DC? That's better than any of the title fights he's had recently, including the first fight with Reyes. If it's a no for numbers, that already headlined a pay-per-view for the first fight. There's going to be more anticipation for the second one. Chael Sonnen versus Anderson Silva, as good as the first fight was, the second fight sold more because of the first fight. It sold because of how good that first fight was. So if they fight again, it's going to do better numbers. So literally the only thing that could beat that, I think it beats DC at this point because DC is going into retirement. Even if he tried to come back, I think it would do less numbers just because he's coming off of a loss now against Stipe, 2 losses from Stipe. So I literally think it's the best fight that John Jones could do right now outside of fighting for a title. Ngannou, I guess, would probably beat it. There's 2 heavyweight fights that would beat it. But anyone else that he would fight at light heavyweight, nothing would beat that. Jan wouldn't beat that. A rematch with Thiago Santos wouldn't beat that. 100%. So I don't really get the idea that the numbers would be bad on that. It's a big thanks to the numbers. It would be great numbers if they fought again. Jones versus Stipe, Kelly McClafferty, William Dunlap. What then, Jones versus the winner of Blades versus Lewis? I think what they're going to do is Jones versus the winner of Ngannou and Stipe is what I think they're going to do. I think they're going to hold him off for that. Talk about a weird sequence of tweets. So if you guys weren't paying attention on Monday, so all of this developed on Monday, literally while Mac Malley and I were doing our Twitch stream. Shout out to our Twitch stream, which starts at 7 p.m. Eastern time tonight. But we were in the midst of it, and Jones just started tweeting at the storm about how he was leaving the UFC and he didn't think things were going to continue with the UFC, and he was basically done with MMA. And then he's like, oh, just got off the phone with him. I'm going to heavyweight and I'm vacating my title. It's like, oh, okay, there you go. Let's see what else we got. Everyone knows John Bones Jones is ducking my boy Yuri. Oh man, Yuri. I can't wait for Yuri to get a couple more wins. If he can get 1 or 2 more wins, I mean, he's already in the top 10. He might even just need 1 more win. He's already in the title hunt. Yuri looks amazing. He's a rising champion. He's looked incredible throughout his entire career. He hasn't lost in 5 years. His last loss was against, who am I thinking of? He fought him twice. You guys know who I'm talking about. I just can't think of his name right now. I'm just having that tip of the tongue kind of issue with it. You guys will fill me in the comments. But anyhow, Anderson Silva should retire. Gosh. Oh, man. That's just kind of a random thought to throw in there. Picogram Jones. You put Pictogram. I know what you meant, though. James, I don't know what. I'm really excited for Reyes Blachowicz. I think it's a great fight. I think it's going to be a firefight. Like, I'm excited for it because it's so similar to the Izzy versus Costa fight in the way that it's going to be pretty much stand-up only. Like, obviously their styles are totally different from Izzy and Costa. I think both of them are pretty calculated, but not nearly as calculated as Israel Adesanya is on the feet, and they're not as marauding as somebody like Costa, who's just going to keep coming forward and just barreling with hooks. They're not going to be quite that reckless like he's going to be, but they're both stand-up fighters who are going for the kill. You know, what did Reyes do in the John Jones fight? He just constantly went for knockout punches, just kept going for it and landed a bunch of them, which is a testament, no matter what you want to say about Jones, a testament to his chin. And then Jan Blachowicz knocks everybody out these days. So I'm pumped for it. Let's see, Nate D. Who should Rumble fight when he comes back? Yuri, Santos, a lower-ranked guy. Yeah, he's finally talking about coming back. So I did miss, so you guys fill me in. Did he say he was coming back at light heavyweight or heavyweight? I would like to see him come back at light heavyweight because I've been seeing him look a little bit more slimmed down. I think the way he is now, he would be a little bit too small for heavyweight. So that might have been what he said, but I did see that he is finally talking about entering the USADA testing pool again. I just couldn't, I don't know if he even said where he's going to be. Okay, so we got a couple super chats. Armenian Jiu-Jitsu, what up? So Armenian Jiu-Jitsu is one of our loyal Twitch followers. Shout outs to you. Thank you for joining on the live chat today. Thoughts on Mac versus Mini. So Mac is the person who hosts. He's also our social media guy, Mac Malley. He hosts our Twitch streams, and he's also our social media guy. And supposedly he's going to be fighting on PS4 today. Minnie Sunnin, who is one of our loyal Twitch followers. I'm gonna have to give it to Mac. I'm sorry, Minnie. I'm sorry if you're in this chat. Really sorry. Tito Ortiz and Man Point, really too famous for fake Tito now. Hey, I just said your name, so there you go. Not too famous anymore. We cleared that one up pretty quick, didn't we? Yuri should fight the loser of Jan versus Reyes. So let's pull up the rankings if you can. Let's see who else in the top 15 would we put up Yuri versus. What about Yuri versus, we were talking about Anthony Johnson. What about Yuri versus Anthony Johnson? Dude, I would go for that 100%. I picture Reyes winning Jones if there was a second fight. Oh, yeah. I mean, I thought he won the first fight, so I'm right there with you. I picture him winning again in my mind, King Mo, thank you for Tyler Spears. That's who I was talking about. The last time that Yuri Prohaska lost was against King Mo Lawal. Thank you for filling that in for me. Appreciate you. Danny D, light heavyweight is all shook up, and no Jones versus Reyes 2 makes a whole mess of blues. But it's now or never for Jones to move up to heavyweight. Who will he fight first? Yeah, I've seen people make the argument, and appreciate the super chat, Danny. I've seen people make the argument that's like, let's not let another GSP versus Anderson Silva kind of go by the wayside, because when they were in their prime, the problem that we always had was it felt like Anderson Silva was a little bit more available because he just washed through his division, but I think 170 is a little bit more stacked. So it seemed like every time we would talk about GSP being free, there would be a new contender that would come up, like a Condit or Nick Diaz coming over from Strikeforce, or there'd be John Fitch, who was just always there. Josh Condit, getting crazy knockouts. Or Josh Condit, wow, Josh Koscheck. You guys know who Josh Condit is, right? Making shit up here. But yeah, so I think that was part of the issue, is that for a long time, you just didn't have this separation for GSP where he totally cleared out his division. Anderson, notably went up to light heavyweight and was fighting guys like James Irvin and Forrest Griffin. So he was getting a little bit bored for a time period there. And like the Yushin Okami fight, I remember just not being hyped for that fight, even a little bit. But even then, I know people are going to give me some flack for this one. I wasn't that hyped for GSP versus Dan Hardy either. And that fight kind of worked out in the way that I thought it would. It was pretty much domination. Although Dan Hardy did show a lot of resilience in that. I wish the Dan Hardy that's the analyst now was, still in his athletic prime and could fight and didn't have that Wolf Parkinson syndrome, which is why he can't fight right now. But anyhow, I think it's really interesting how that always shaked out to where we never got GSP versus Silva. And that's the argument I've heard other people make, is that we need to make Jones versus Stipe now because it's akin to GSP versus Silva. I don't think their records are that far separated. At least Stipe's aren't, because Stipe is only on a 2-fight win streak against the same guy, DC. But aside from that, you could have made that argument because he had the longest consecutive title win streak with 3 title defenses. What did he have? He had Ngannou. He had Verdum is who he won it from. He had Alistair. Was JDS the other one? So were those the 3? JDS, Ngannou, and Alistair? Was that it? But anyhow, that's what I've seen other people compare it to, is GSP versus Silva, Stipe versus Jones. And to an extent, I can kind of see what they mean. But the Dominic Reyes fight just happened, and you got to rematch that, in my opinion. I feel like we can't let that one get away. That's unfortunate. That's kind of like, what happened with the Gustafsson fight. If they would have rematched around that time, around the 2015 time, I think it would have been far more interesting a fight. But they waited all the way till 2019, and Gustafsson, let's just face it, wasn't. He'd already had like a year and a half off layoff, and he just wasn't the same person by then, unfortunately. Let's see. What else we got? Farmer Rabs, thoughts on Colby versus Tyron Woodley. Appreciate that. That's a $1.99 super chat. Thank you. So I'll jump on this. I think that I think that Colby will win the fight. So people who watch this channel, I'm not a fan of Colby Covington. So I'm not saying this with any sort of bias towards Colby Covington. I'm not a fan of him. But the Tyron Woodley that we've seen lately in fights, who knows? This might motivate him to come back. We've definitely seen the one that we've seen up against Gilbert Burns most recently, and the one that we saw against Usman. The version of Tyron Woodley that we've seen has not been, in my estimation, the best version of him. On the same token, I think we've seen the best version of Usman, and I think we've seen the best version of Gilbert Burns in both of those occasions. So it's kind of like a double whammy. I don't think that we're necessarily seeing the best out of Tyron, but we are seeing the best out of his opponents, which is, making him look worse by comparison. But I think Colby's going to be super motivated for that fight. I think Colby's got a chip on his shoulder. He doesn't have a championship to his name. Tyron Woodley is getting older. What's Tyron Woodley is, can you look up Tyron Woodley? I think he's going to be 38 or 39 this year. He's getting up there in age. He's already become champion. And it seems like the motivation, so he's 38 years old. He turns 38 in April, it looks like. I just don't know if the motivation is there for Tyron Woodley anymore. And I think we'll have to see, it'll depend on this fight. But I think Colby is hungry. I think Colby has just insane cardio. He's got good enough skills in the feet to be able to stand with somebody like Robbie Lawler and at least go almost 5 full rounds with somebody who has similar boxing skills but just has a bit more power than Usman. So, yeah, I think I would go with Colby in this one. We'll have to see. There's part of me that just sees Tyron Woodley coming out like so crazy motivated for this one. But the last couple fights that we've seen out of him just haven't resembled the killer Tyron Woodley that we've seen in other fights, So it depends on which Tyron Woodley shows up for sure. But my early prediction on it, Colby wins it. Armenian Jiu-Jitsu, thanks again for another super chat, $2. Just landed in Tennessee. Jason, can I move in now? Jesus Christ. We've been joking that we're going to hire him for MMA on Point, and he's going to replace Mac Malley. Let's see. All right, so let me catch up on the chat. There's so many comments. Really appreciate you guys being interactive today.
Did we skip the very first super chat?
Oh, did we skip the very first super chat?
Zaldivar.
It's so hard to keep up with these. Zaldivar. Okay. Did you see Aaron Bronstedter's tweet about CM Punk being tested by USADA more than 4 UFC champs? Yes, I did see that. I don't know why he would still be in the USADA testing pool. And there wasn't really a whole lot added to it on top of that. That means he can fight anytime. I don't know why we would ever want to see that. When was the last time he fought? So the last time he fought was actually when Colby fought RDA, right? So that was a couple of years ago, just over 2 years ago, I believe. I believe that was April 2018-ish. So you're pulling it up for us. There's so much to scroll through. He's got his whole WWE career, so he's on his Wikipedia page. Yeah, you're going to have to scroll a lot faster. Yeah. I think it's been about 2 years. What happened? Did it freeze up on you?
No, I just didn't do that.
Bro, get there, dude. Come on, man. You're the worst young Jamie ever. You're down too far. You're already in the credits.
Already passed it. Oh, shit.
There it is. Yeah, he only has 2 fights. So June 9th, 2018. So I was thinking it was April, but it was June. So it's been about 2 years for him. So he could have been training this whole time. And at least, what is that? His first fight was in 2016. So that would mean he has about, 6 years of training now by the time he would actually fight, because he signed with the UFC in 2014, the end of 2014. But I don't see that making any difference. I don't see that meaning he would be any better. I think it would be the worst decision ever for him to fight again. I thought it was the worst decision ever to have him fight in the first place. But, it's really interesting, and I did see that, and that's a good comment, Zaldivar. I do appreciate that, and sorry for initially missing that super chat. Appreciate you letting me know there, Lon. But, okay, so let me get caught back up. I'm not going to be able to read your name, bro. You gave me a $1.99 super chat. I'm not even going to try to pronounce it. I do appreciate you. Will Stipe be the GOAT if he beats Ngannou/Jones? I think he's the heavyweight, the greatest heavyweight of all time. So here's a really tough question. So let me ask you guys this. This is really, really tough. How do you parse out who the best heavyweight is? Do you judge it by kind of like grading on a scale to say, like Fedor, for instance? Fedor was unquestionably the best fighter of his era. By 2007, when Pride fell, He was on like a 30-fight unbeaten streak, had beaten anybody that they'd thrown at him. And the best heavyweights were unquestionably in Pride. So, let's go with Randy Couture. Randy Couture lost to Big Nog. Big Nog lost to Fedor twice handedly. And there was the weird headbutt in between fight where it was just a no contest. But how do you grade that? Do you grade it on a scale to say Fedor was the best of his time? Or do you say Stipe could beat any other heavyweight based on his prime versus their prime? Because unquestionably, if you go back 13 years, you could take anybody from their prime of their 13 years and pop them in to 2020. They're going to lose. They're probably going to lose against anybody in the top 15 pretty handedly. They might get some wins, but that's just how developed the sport is. Let's not forget, the sport only started in 1993. So by 2007, when Pride fell, the sport was only 14 years old. Of course, it was mixing older mixed martial arts together. It was mixing those together. So you had, Sambo had been around for eons. BJJ had been around for eons. Wrestling had been around for eons. But the combination of them was certainly not settled. And you look at the old ground game, when somebody would fall into somebody's guard in the 90s, it was just honestly kind of boring. Honestly, kind of boring when you look at some of those old lay and pray performances that you saw in the early UFC, even early Pride in like 1997, which is where I believe the lay and pray term was coined. I want to say Stephen Quadros, the Pride commentator, actually came up with that one. So it's kind of a weird one, you just can't really compare the prime then versus now. Stipe is going to beat anybody from any of those eras. And then, of course, he's beaten Verdum. And Verdum is the one who beat Fedor. So it's one of those kind of weird things. Curious to get your guys' thoughts on that. For me, I say that, so to answer that Super Chat question, I do say that the best heavyweight ever is Stipe because he would beat anybody from everybody else's era. Is his legacy as good as Fedor's? No. I think they're kind of two different things, if that makes sense. But I do think he's the best heavyweight who's ever come around. He could beat any other heavyweight, except for maybe Ngannou right now. But from any other area, any other champion, I think he would beat Kane. I think he would beat the best JDS. I think he would beat all those versions. So what else we got? $5 super chat from Armenian Jiu-Jitsu. Heavyweight GOAT ranks. Number 1, Stipe. Number 2, Kane. Number 3, Fedor. 4, DC. And then 5, Randy. Let me think about that one. So I agree with Stipe. And I got to be honest, I agree with Kane. And then Fedor, I think, is probably fair. Who else would I even throw up there? JDS was a close one for a while. Randy Couture he's a 3-time UFC heavyweight. So he won right after UFC 14, which was a heavyweight tournament, but that wasn't the heavyweight belt at that time. He beat Maurice Smith to win the title. He left the UFC and promptly lost to Enson Inoue, which is crazy. But then he came back and he beat Kevin Randleman, and then he lost to Josh Barnett. Josh Barnett popped for steroids. So he ended up fighting for the title again and didn't do well against Rico Rodriguez. Rico Rodriguez beat him. So he went down to light heavyweight. And then when he went down to light heavyweight, that's where he beat Chuck Liddell. And then he had his whole feud with him there, had his semi-retirement, and then came back in 2008 and beat Tim Sylvia in one of the best heavyweight performances of all time. So he's a 3-time heavyweight champion. There's not a lot of 3-time champions out there, period. The only other 3-time champion that I know of is actually Michael Chandler, and he's in Bellator. So there's a difference, I would definitely argue, with the UFC, and I think most people would back me up on that. So, Randy Couture definitely does deserve his place. You could argue he gets top 5 just by virtue of that alone, just through all those eras coming back. I mean, Kevin Randleman was a monster. Maurice Smith just beat Mark Coleman. Mark Coleman was a monster. I wouldn't say Maurice Smith was the most electrifying heavyweight champion ever. His win over Tank Abbott literally saw Tank Abbott quit in the middle of the fight. So it's pretty interesting, but it's a fun conversation to have. I think I'm pretty close. I don't know if I can say for sure that I have the same rankings as you, Armenian Jiu-Jitsu, but I think we're really closely aligned. Paul Gutierrez, $10. Love the channel, guys. I'm actually really stoked for Blachowicz versus Reyes. Tons of power with only milligrams of personality. Oh, wow, that's hilarious. This will be a slugfest with awkward post-fight interviews, thoughts. Yeah, so I did get to interview both of them right around their time. So when Reyes fought it's so funny looking back at that John Jones fight. Everyone counted Reyes out. If you look at those comment sections, the downvote ratio on Reyes talking about how he's, going to hit John Jones and he's going to push him harder than ever. Basically, all the comment sections on all those YouTube interviews and things, they were just shitting on Dominic Reyes the whole time. They were all just like, dude, you don't have a chance. All you've got is left hands. And I asked Reyes about that. I got to interview him before that, and he was just like, dude, I promise you I'm more than what you guys think. And he was pissed. He was angry at the fans. And now everybody's on his side now. I personally did give him a shot in that. I didn't think he would do nearly as well as he did, but I thought he had a chance. I wasn't totally counting him out. So I think it's really interesting. I think Reyes actually is a fairly compelling interview, especially when you see him in cases like that. And I think over time, people will revisit, particularly the pre-fight interviews before John Jones. So I'm not saying he's, some fantastic, electrifying person to hear speak or anything like that. I wouldn't really argue that for many people on the entire planet. But he is really somebody, when he cares about what he's talking about, a really compelling personality. And I think he could be before this one, and I think he could be interesting. Jan Blachowicz, obviously, he's Polish. English is his second language, so I don't think we're going to find that much here. But he is cutthroat about what he says. It's almost like when you hear Valentina Shevchenko talking about people, she's like, yeah, I'm just going to finish him. I'm just going to, take him apart. He's just going to say something to the point and kind of brutal. It's cutthroat. So I don't think we're necessarily going to get the most compelling interviews at him. But, yeah, I agree with you. Tons of power, tons of performance. I think it's going to be an explosive fight. And right now, at this point, I think I'm going to count out Jan again. I shouldn't do that because I counted him out against Luke Rockhold and Corey Anderson. I thought both of those guys would have won those fights. And so he absolutely has the opportunity to get the upset here. But seeing what Reyes did to John Jones, seeing him do that, it's really, really hard for me to pick against Dominic Reyes at this juncture, So it'll be interesting. I know we did get a couple more Super Chats here. 2 more? Okay, so Justin Newstead, there we go. Okay, Rumble said he wants to move up to heavyweight, but his manager said he will return at light heavyweight. I mean, he does look lean again. I think that there's almost like the cardio factor is just too important for MMA, and so when he was off camp and he wasn't really training for fights and he was semi-retired, I think he was bulking up because, that was one of the things that he liked to do to stay in shape. But now that he's training for fights, he's starting to slim down again just by virtue of making sure he has cardio. And if there's been any kind of calling card for him, if there's been any way to beat him, it was like literally in the first DC fight, his coach, they were yelling at him, don't quit. Like if you remember that, Joe Rogan was talking about that on the broadcast. It's like, dude, they literally just shouted out, don't quit to Rumble Johnson. So if there's anything that is his detriment, it's like, all right, if you get out of those first couple rounds, which is true of almost any power puncher, so I'm not saying it's necessarily unique to him, but the fact that his team was yelling don't quit to him, particularly when he was in a wrestling scramble, tells you how important that is. Did something just happen?
No, this story is just cracking me up.
Oh, yeah. Don't quit. Yeah, sorry, Lawton laughed off camera. I want to make sure I didn't say anything crazy. Let's talk about 145 and Uriah Hall. That's what I called him last time. I called him Uriah Hall. Anyhow, whatever. But yeah, I think it makes sense for him to come back at light heavyweight. I think that's where his best was. I think we do want to see him at heavyweight, and I think that makes sense. But I just wonder, because he was a 170-pounder who's bulked up. How much bulked up composition can you have while still maintaining the cardio and still being able to hang with the bigger guys? And I really question that. I really question if he can be a 250-pound heavyweight with all that muscle added on, but the lactic acid that he'll have to face whenever he starts to kind of get tired and starts to gas. Zaldivar, $5 more. Appreciate you, Zaldivar. What stands out to me regarding the USADA tweet is the implication that the champs/popular fighters might be tested less than the rest of the roster. Corrupt. So I actually disagree with that. And I get what your point is. It really does truly seem to be random with USADA and almost doesn't make sense. So let's not forget Cormier. So this was about a year ago. Complained pretty heavily to USADA publicly on Twitter about how many times he'd been tested. He's actually been tested over 50 times. And I was actually there at his ceremony at UFC 248 where they gave him a special commemorative jacket. The only other person to get that is Holly Holm. I was also there for that. She got a special jacket for that as well. And Holly Holm isn't suspected of cheating at all. I really do think that USADA is random about it, almost too random about it. I think Apple went through this a couple of years ago with their MP3 players, their iPods back in the day, with people saying that the shuffle mode wasn't random enough because you would get the same artist twice or even the next track on it. And so they actually had to make the algorithm for their shuffle to make it to where it wouldn't play the same artist twice back to back. So it actually truly wasn't random anymore. I really do think USADA is random about it, because why would you test Daniel Cormier, of all people, more than 50 plus times, and he's passed every single test? Why would you test him more than John Jones, let's say? Maybe because John Jones was out for a while, but why does he have 50 tests? Why does Holly Holm have 50 tests? I truly think it's random to such an arbitrary degree that you do see things like CM Punk actually getting tested more, or DC getting tested more. I think it's really odd. It's really strange. I don't think it makes sense, but that's part of being random. Random doesn't really truly make sense. It is arbitrary by definition. Mini Mac JWM, appreciate the super chat. $14.99. You are awesome. What chance does John Jones have against Ngannou and Stipe, in your opinions, Vegas odd style? I actually would take him as a favorite against Stipe. I would take him as a favorite there, just because of how close the fights have been against DC. And not to say, the first fight with DC and Jones, I think the third round I gave to him, that was the one where DC gave Jones a bunch of uppercuts from the dirty boxing, position. That same single collar tie that we saw against Stipe all throughout, the first, second, and third fights. That was really DC's bread and butter, really against anybody. We've seen it against Gus. So that was probably the round he had the most success, was the third round in the Jones fight. But really, it was kind of a wash in the first fight, and then he was way more competitive in the second fight, and then got head kicked, and of course it got overturned, so it doesn't officially count. But Jones smoked him, and Jones is a light heavyweight. I think that Jones, when he goes up to heavyweight, I think he's going to be more trouble for Stipe. I think the range is going to be an issue for him, just like it was in the Gus fight when he's fighting somebody of a similar height and a similar... Actually, his reach is still longer than Stipe's, but it's still similar reach, He's still a longer guy, much longer than DC, that's for sure. But I give Jones the advantage there. I think Jones takes that fight. And you want to do Vegas odd style, maybe I'll give him like a minus 150. I'm not going to give him too much. I'm not going to jump to like a minus 500 or anything wild or above that. So I'll probably give that to him there. Ngannou, though, so I was wrong about Ngannou when he fought Stipe the first time. I thought he would beat Stipe in the first fight. I think we're looking at a better Ngannou, one who is aware of the wrestling now to a degree that he was forced to face in the first Stipe fight. We saw him beat Blades. Blades has been dominating everybody in wrestling. He just smashed him. I think that's what we're looking at in the Stipe fight here. And I will say this about Stipe. Every single time it seems like you count out, every time you count out Stipe just does better. I thought he was going to lose the second fight to DC, and I thought he was going to lose the third fight to DC. And each one of those he passed with flying colors. Stipe is a motherfucker to deal with. And the moment you count him out, he does really, really well. So I do want to say that about him. But I am counting on Ngannou to win. I think Ngannou beats anybody at heavyweight right now. I think Ngannou, it's probably by knockout, Like, you look at that Rosenstruck fight, man. Like, he basically just abandoned defense altogether and just went hook, 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 hook. One landed, didn't care about having another one. That's like straight God mode. It's unfair. It just doesn't even make sense. Like, this guy just has so much raw power and ability that the technique doesn't even have to be there. And don't take that from me. This isn't just me armchair saying this. Plenty of fighters have said this. Plenty of analysts have said this. It is the diagnosis of what we're looking at with Francis Ngannou. I think Francis Ngannou beats Stipe in the rematch, and I think he beats Jones. If Jones can manage to beat either of them, though, I mean, Jones is really going to make a case for the greatest of all time, even with the steroids and stuff like that. If we're still counting Anderson Silva up there in the best, I think we still can. And people are always going to make the argument that GSP was clean his whole career, and you can't take that away from GSP. You could still make the argument, even if, let's say Jones goes up, he beats Stipe, he beats Ngannou, he beats Rosenstruck, whoever the next number one person is by then, I don't even know who that would be at this point. Cyril Gane, maybe. And he gets 3 title defenses up there and at least matches the tie for the most title defenses ever at heavyweight. You could still make the argument that GSP is the greatest of all time. And that's something that John Jones is always going to have to face. But, I see Stipe actually losing to Jones or Ngannou at this point. And I know that's a really tough one. Like I said, it's when I count out Stipe that he does his best. So don't hate me too much for saying that. I know a lot of people are huge Stipe fans, but that's just the honest truth of the way I see it. I was wrong the first time, so I may be wrong again in the Ngannou fight. But I see Ngannou toppling everyone. But Vegas odds style, I already said Jones versus Stipe. I gave him like a minus 150. For Ngannou, maybe I give him a minus 100. Somewhere, just kind of a slight margin there. Armenian Jiu-Jitsu, Mac Malley is my laddie, but I'll always be his Armenian daddy. Boom, roasted. What the fuck, Armenian Jiu-Jitsu? What kind of comment is that? Appreciate the $5 super chat. You're a legend, my friend. Farmer Rabs, $4.99 super chat. You guys are killing it with super chats today. Really appreciate you guys.
6 pending, so just be ready.
Yeah, you guys are awesome. Really appreciate it. Can we talk about Costa versus Israel's trailer? I got goosebumps. Also, UFC 4. It's just UFC 3 reskinned, and that breaks my heart. So, a couple good things to talk about here. Yeah, it totally 100% gave me goosebumps. It's so awesome that they have that footage of him winning the title. Izzy beating Robert Whittaker, and look who's right there, cage side, Costa, and they're just talking shit to each other. It's so great to be able to use in that trailer, and the hype for it. I'm probably more hyped for this than any fight right now the rest of the year that they can possibly book outside of Justin Gaethje and Khabib. So this is probably my number 2 fight. I am super, super pumped for this fight. I cannot wait. September 26th cannot come quick enough. I'm super stoked. Let's just wish my life away for the next month and a half. Let's just do that. I'm pumped for it. I think it's going to be fantastic. So, yes, I got goosebumps as well coming off of that. You said that also UFC 4 is just UFC 3 reskinned, and that breaks my heart. I think they added some meaningful changes to it, so shout out to our Twitch streams again, so Armenian Jiu-Jitsu is one of our guys from that, and if you guys want to come check us out, we will be doing that at 7 p.m., and I'm going to announce this, 7 p.m. Eastern time, that is, we'll be doing our Twitch stream. That's twitch.tv/MMA on point, so come join us there. It's actually going to be Max Randall, so our video editor. You guys are familiar with him. He's our OG video editor, fantastic video editor, and he's really great on the streams, doing that with Mac Malley. So join us tonight at 7 for that. I'll be on, so I'm just going to announce this now. Tomorrow, we're going to release a video about our video game history, and there are so many interesting facts. Like, if you guys have ever wondered about why THQ got out of the UFC game, so I know this is kind of niche. I know not necessarily everyone's interested in the UFC video games, but back in 2010, THQ announced that they were going to be with the UFC until 2018. They ended up signing over their rights to EA Sports in 2012. There's actually a whole lawsuit enveloped in that. Like, it's crazy, and THQ is obviously going bankrupt, but there's a whole interesting saga that goes on there. There's a bunch of really interesting things. Talking about the first video game in 1999 on Dreamcast, it actually won E3s, believe it or not. It won E3. So if you're a gamer, you know exactly what I'm talking about. E3, it won the E3 Best in Show fighting game in did I say 1999? I meant to say 2000. In 2000. So it beat Tekken Tag Tournament. Tekken Tag Tournament, if you're a gamer in any slightest, or you're just familiar with Tekken in the slightest whatsoever, that's insane that it beat that. So there's just a bunch of interesting tidbits that we're going to dive into, and I've researched the fuck out of this video, and I swear it's taken me 3 goddamn weeks to edit and put together. So we are going to do a special stream right after that. So we'll basically put that video up at 1 p.m. Eastern time, and then right after that, go live on Twitch. So check us out today, tomorrow, and we'll also be up on Friday. So sorry for the shameless plugs. I'm just stoked about our Twitch channel. It's just, I can't help but gush about it. I think it's fun. But to say it's reskins, we play it all the time on our Twitch stream, so that's kind of the tie-in to everything. I do think that UFC 4 is a better game. I will say that. I do think it needs a whole lot more, though. Like, obviously, there's a lot of ceiling room. Speaking of THQ, they had UFC Undisputed 3 with a Pride mode. I think that would be massive. I do love the Kumite mode. I love the Backyard Fights mode. I like that they improved the Knockouts mode. I think that's better. But the career, dude, I don't know how they haven't figured out how to do a better career at this point. Add in actual storylines with real fighters on whatever weight class it is. So let's say whoever the champion is at the time that the game comes out, so middleweight. Let's say your character is middleweight. Let's say you have an actual feud with scripted storylines with Israel Adesanya leading up to a heavyweight title. It's literally just training camp, fight, training camp, fight. That's the whole career mode. It's boring as hell. Like, one of the things that they did in UFC 3, people are probably so bored by this, but sorry, it's just been a part of my life lately. So I love, talking about this stuff. They tried doing like the UFC Minute and stuff like that with Megan O'Leary, or have Dana White having generic messages in their career mode in UFC 3. And while I say that was a miss, it was effort at least, and they just kind of did away with it and just gave up on the whole concept. It's just the career mode is kind of shitty. And that's why people are all about ranked, because the career mode does suck. It just does. So I think it's something that they could do a whole lot better with. And I think it's, if you want to get the casual gamers more involved, the people that, prefer to play video games more generally and are UFC fans, and you want to bring them along, I think the career mode is your best shot, because it is kind of a forced tutorial mode. If you do it right, it doesn't feel like one. I don't know. But anyhow, I think it is a better game. And in some aspects, yes, it is reskinned. Thank you for the super chat, Farmer Rabs. And sorry for going on for that for so long for anybody who just didn't give a fuck. Richard Enormous. Okay, nice pun on words, or play on words there. Canadian $5. Appreciate you. With the incredibly stupid things people do for internet clout these days, I am confident we can bring back bully beatdown with real people. Yeah, Jason Mayhem Miller, if you guys used to watch that, it was on MTV back when MTV was still kind of, quote unquote cool, whatever you want to say. And that's what he used to do. He used to bring on fighters. He even had a fight with bullies. And so that's what they would do. They would have like basically a guy who got bullied in high school or middle school, whatever it was, and then him challenge his old high school bully to come on the show, and they would have to fight Eddie Alvarez, for instance. Eddie Alvarez was literally on an episode. Jason Mayhem Miller did it, and a bunch of other fighters did. And it was a great show. It was a lot of fun. I'd be on board. I'd love to see it come back. It was a more entertaining, kind of innovative idea. It was just kind of a ridiculous way to kind of get, when people cared about MTV, the UFC on a popular TV channel. I thought it was great. So I'm with you, man. I would love to see Bully beat down back. I don't know if you could get Jason Mayhem Miller these days, though. That dude has had a crazy fucking life since then. He was already crazy, but, running around naked in churches and doing crazy shit that actually happens. Oh, what's up, Uncle Joey? I see you up in here. Uncle Joey's Edits. Appreciate you, brother. He is, I think, we'll have to see. I haven't looked at, he's working on trying to edit videos for us, and I think he'll become an actual video editor. So I'll say that out loud now. But yeah, he's got one more edit to go through, and then once we go through that, he should be a part of the team, and we'll start announcing him on video. So shout out to you, Uncle Joey, MMA Edits, and definitely check out his YouTube channel. Great YouTube channel. The Bird Nest, $10. Where do you see Rumble fitting into the title picture at light heavyweight? Dom and Jan are at the top, with Glover and Santos being behind them, and Yuri further down making waves. Personally, I like Santos. Big fan. Appreciate you, Bird Nest. Really, really appreciate you. That's very, very kind of you to say. Where I see him fitting in there, yeah, like I actually just mentioned him earlier. Someone like Yuri would actually be a super fun fight. That would be a big name for Yuri to go up against. And if Rumble wins, Rumble now gets to leapfrog one of the most hyped prospects of the division. And for good reason. I mean, I know people will say, oh, Yuri's only had one fight in the UFC, but he's got a whole catalog of masterpiece fights. Back in December for the New Year's Eve show, with Ryzen, he knocked out CB Dalloway. He's been punishing people from all these different divisions. Alexander Shlemenko basically jumped out of the ring in the middle of their fight, tried to, I don't want to say quit, but he very much evaded, a la Charlie Z style. If you guys know who Charlie Z is, basically jumped out of the ropes. Commentators were all over it. The fans were booing him. They knew what was up. Shlemenko used to be a Bellator champion. So these are the kind of guys that Yuri has been, finishing. And then, of course, Oezdemir has all the finishing power in the world, even rocked Yuri in the first round. Yuri deserves all the hype in the world. And I think if he can beat somebody like Rumble Johnson, I think that would be really great. And that would be a great return fight. They both get something out of that fight. That fight means something for both fighters there. And this is a really great opportunity. So DC is, Rumble Johnson's Achilles heel at light heavyweight, beat him twice. John Jones is not there anymore, and I know that we all really want to see that fight, but it leaves an opening for him that we haven't seen. And you mentioned Thiago Santos, which is really good. Anthony Smith obviously is coming off that really terrible loss to Glover, who you also mentioned. I don't know if I put Glover. I think I've just kind of waned on him over time. I think he had a great performance in that Smith fight, but I don't know if I see him as championship caliber anymore. And I would love for him to prove me wrong. I would really love for him to do that. Just because I love to see fighters come back, that kind of thing, and kind of rise from the ashes. But what I see here is, I probably see Santos up against somebody like Yuri or Rumble, something like that. I mean, he really needs one more fight, and he could be right back in the title picture. Some of the judges actually scored him beating John Jones, and he totally tore both of his knees. I don't know if it was an ACL on both knees or if it was like a PCL on one knee and an ACL on the other. I can't remember. It might have been an ACL on both knees. But either way, it's ridiculous that he was still standing. He was still kicking John Jones with both of those legs. Just insane. Thiago Santos is legit and as good as it gets. So maybe we get him one more fight. Maybe Yuri could be that fight. I don't know if that's too much too soon for Yuri. Like I said, it could be just one more performance for that guy, and that guy could be in the title. He does deserve it. I think Yuri does for everything he's done. He's basically like Eddie Alvarez was to an extent, of being kind of an underground king, fighting in Ryzen for so many years and fighting on the European circuit for so many years. So I think it's great. But Rumble versus Yuri, for whatever reason, I'm just kind of into that one. And you mentioned Santos. I think that would be great. You could throw Santos against either of those, and I wouldn't be mad. Great question, and I really appreciate that. Okay, so I'm trying to get caught up on the chat. There's definitely another super chat that I missed. Dude, you guys are legit today, man.
Did you get William Dunlap yet?
I don't think so. Okay, there it is. William Dunlap, $2. Thoughts on Munhoz versus Edgar? Thank you. Somebody's finally mentioned this weekend's fight. I really appreciate that. Finally making his bantamweight debut. Yeah, great question, William Dunlap. This is the thing, people have been talking about forever how he looks a lot smaller than a lot of bantamweights, We've seen Jose Aldo go down to bantamweight now, and how much more tragic could that get for you as Frankie Edgar? The fact that now that you're finally moving down one weight class, the guy that you've lost to pretty handedly on two separate occasions, not, finishes, but decisive unanimous decisions called for your name and called against Frankie Edgar. It kind of sucks that he's moved down there. I don't think that we're going to see Frankie Edgar in a title hunt again, but I do think we'll see him competitive here. I think we'll see him get to maybe title contention. I think he totally can win against Frankie Munhoz, and I'll actually go as far to say, you know what? Let's give this one to Frankie Edgar. I think his boxing is fantastic on the feet, and he's so hard to keep down that Munhoz's ground game is excellent, but I don't think we'll necessarily get him down there. And I think it'll mostly be contested boxing. And I know that he did lose handedly to Max Holloway, but Frankie Edgar did pretty damn good in that fight. Way better than I expected him to do in the Max Holloway fight. I just thought Max Holloway was going to smoke him. He stuck around through all 5 rounds in that fight. And although you could argue that Max Holloway won every round, it's not like he was ghosting him in those rounds and just totally demolishing Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar is still championship caliber, I would say. Do I think he wins? No. Do I think he necessarily actually gets another title shot, I think it shows that he's right up there with him and he's capable of beating any of those top guys. But I think with somebody like an Aldo there, I think somebody like that is going to keep him at bay. I think that's the difficult part, because Aldo is also championship caliber. And I don't care what anybody says, he looked great in the Petr Yan fight. So for me, I say Frankie Edgar wins this fight. I think he does it with his boxing, his slick movement on the feet, and just volume. I think he does it with volume. And I think we're probably looking at a decision here. Munhoz can absolutely finish him. I mean, he finished Cody Garbrandt, you know. Munhoz is great, but I give it to Edgar personally. Great question, and I appreciate someone bringing that up. Thank you. Paul Gutierrez, $5. Thank you. Sorry for being hard on Reyes versus Blachowicz earlier. I'm sure they are great. Do you think Poirier versus Ferguson is the next fight to make it light heavyweight? Wow. Lightweight. Let's just bump them up like 6 weight classes real quick. Yeah, I think that's great, man. I fully agree with that booking decision. And maybe the loser fights Conor McGregor at this point. I mean, Conor McGregor's faking retirement, so let's treat him like he's retired and not, you know, give him one of those guys. Because I know he was angling for Poirier or Ferguson. In my mind, that's what makes sense. That's the number one contender. Whoever wins that fight, let's book that one. Even better, let's book it for October. Let's put it as, you know, either the co-main event. What is the co-main event currently? So look up UFC 254. That's in October. That's when Justin Gaethje fights Khabib. And that would be great to have that as the co-main event. I would love to see that. I know we've got Islam Makhachev. Who's Islam Makhachev fighting? I know they just announced that. 254, yeah. So pull that up and scroll down. Oh, wow. They're only... okay, yeah, scroll up. No. Why are you scrolling past everything? So announced bouts. There we go. That's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. You just kept going for some reason. Robert Whittaker versus Jared Cannonier. That's fantastic. That's a number one contenders fight. Zabit Magomed Sharipov versus Yair Rodriguez. My God. This card is really shaping up. Who's Islam Makhachev fighting? I thought he was fighting on this card. Somebody help me out with that. But anyhow, I think that would make sense for the co-main event. You put Dustin Poirier and you put Ferguson there. The only other contender for, you know, a co-main event would be Robert Whittaker versus Jared Cannonier. I mean, dude, that would be like a number one contender fight, like just wet dream right there. Robert Whittaker versus Jared Cannonier, number one contender. Zabit versus Yair, number one contender. Or the Korean Zombie versus Brian Ortega. You could kind of just look at those performances and maybe judge which one you feel like has earned it more based off of that win, because they're neck and neck in terms of ranking. And then, yeah, you throw in, who was I just saying? Losing my train of thought a little bit here. Ferguson versus Poirier. There we go. Thanks, Lawton. I'm kidding. You're not responsible for that. Farmer Rabs, I feel like Costa will beat Israel because he seems hungry. Yeah, he definitely does. Voracious. And it looks like he really wants it, but people say he will get outstruck by Israel. Thoughts? So I am picking, so full disclosure, I am picking Israel Adesanya in this one. The closest comparison that we have right now is actually Uriah Hall. Making the joke, yeah, let's just not get into that. Anyhow, people who watched last week, or actually that was 2 weeks ago now. People who watched 2 weeks ago already know what I'm talking about, but we won't get too far into that. That was embarrassing. Anyhow, the closest thing that we can compare with Costa and Izzy is Costa versus Hall. And in that fight, you know, Hall was basically doing everything right, popping him with a jab, trying to keep him on the outside. The problem is for most people, that's what keeps you at bay. That's what keeps you back. It's you get punished while trying to come in, and you feel the sting, and you feel like, oh man, I could actually get knocked out by this. You start to have some warning signs going off. Maybe I shouldn't rush in like that. Guess who doesn't give a fuck about that? Paulo Costa just marauded him, just kept coming forward, didn't care. And I'm not saying that Uriah Hall and Izzy have the same style. I'm saying that they are technical strikers who, at least in that sense, will try to keep him on the outside. And in this instance, Costa just did not care. And he didn't even care against Yoel Romero. Who in the world marches down Romero? Who does that? Who marches down Yoel Romero? Nobody. except for Paulo Costa. Paulo Costa will come forward and he'll push the fight to him unless he's crazy injured or something just really weird happens outside of this fight. So I absolutely think he can do what he did to Uriah Hall and Yoel. I did think Yoel won the fight when I watched that fight, but it was a really close fight, so I'm not actually mad at the fact that Costa got the decision there. I think it could have gone either way, so I'm not really mad at that one. But if he can march down through Yoel and he can march down through Uriah Hall, he can march down through Izzy. The problem is we've seen people try to do that to Izzy, and that's what knocked out Robert Whittaker. Robert Whittaker really chased Izzy and paid for it. He got hit with really big hooks, and he got dropped in the exact same way. I believe it was a left hook, right? Caught him twice, knocked him down in the first round, finished him in the second. So I think that's the Izzy that I see fighting Paulo Costa. I see matadoring him, but I can totally see Costa winning this fight, and that's what makes it so good. It truly is, in my mind, a pick'em fight, and I'm just barely giving Izzy the edge. Armenian Jiu-Jitsu, man, appreciate you today, dude. $2 super chat. Jason beat Mac in UFC 4 twice. Don't cross the box. Dude, I was not supposed to win that fight. So you want to talk about some mechanics that are totally abused in UFC 4? It's the 1-2. You can just spam the 1-2, and literally that's what I just did. It's just jab, straight, jab, straight. Just did that over and over, and somehow got a couple of knockouts on Mac. That was not supposed to happen. Let's see, what time are we at now? So, yeah, we got about 30 minutes to go. Awesome. You guys have been killing it today. Howard Tran. Oh, dude, good to see Howard Tran up in here. He says, how do you rate Mac Malley versus Mini Sun in fight promo? Oh, that was you that made that poster on Twitter. I rate it a 0 out of 10. Get your shit together. No, I'm kidding. Nice work. I appreciate you hyping it up. And then we're going to see the big match tonight on Twitch. So, yeah, well done. Well done, my friend, Howard Tran, who is 12, by the way. He's 16, but I always make fun of him, say he's 12 for some reason. But Jesse Barath gave us Canadian $5. Appreciate you. Do you ever see O'Malley becoming a top bantamweight prospect in the future, or is the hype train dead now that the blueprints for beating him have been exposed? So I think I'm like virtually one of the only people here. So I know this is an unpopular opinion, but I do think that there's probably something going on in his fight camp before the fight. I am utterly unconvinced that one leg kick did that. And I'm not saying that other fights haven't happened. So we had this discussion on Twitch on Monday. So we have seen guys like Cejudo get a leg kick, and I feel like it was more than just one leg kick, but it messed up his leg in the second Demetrius Johnson fight. Of course, he recovered in that, and he did not go out on a stretcher holding onto his leg, literally screaming in pain. And you could argue it's just a degree of how well it landed, and that's why he was able to recover. Cejudo was against DJ. Did I say Dominic Reyes? I meant to say Demetrius Johnson. I'm second guessing myself. Anyhow, I'm correcting myself if I did say it before. I think I did say Demetrius Johnson, but you know, you got to cover yourself. So I am. But anyhow, it was a leg kick in both those situations. The Michael Chandler one, I have rewatched that one. I believe that was an ankle roll, not from a leg kick. So he actually fucked up his ankle, and that's the reason why he was really having trouble with it, because he actually fucked up his ankle. He didn't break it. Neither did O'Malley, neither did Cejudo. But the odds for me that one leg kick did that, and of all the fights that we've seen, it's either just, I do argue that that is a fluke. Because, I mean, it's the same way that I see the Weidman kick with Anderson Silva. How many times have you seen a check leg kick? And how many times have you seen it break? I can only think of two. I think of Anderson Silva, and oddly one of his early training partners. Oh, crap. I can't remember his name right now. Pele. Pele was the only other one that it happened to, and it happened in a much smaller promotion in the same gruesome fashion. And ironically, they were actually rivals who talked about fighting for years. He was just never in the UFC. Pele was never in the UFC. So what are the odds? We either have this really rare, just crazy scenario where one leg kick does that. And all credit to, so I do want to say this, Chito Vera, I gave him a chance to win that fight before. I think he's great. I think he's a very, very talented fighter. So you can't take away anything from him. But on the same token, did we land a 1 in a million shot? I mean, how many leg kicks do you see land where you see someone's leg go out as a result of it? And they're not screaming, going out on a stretcher while holding it, even when it does happen. That's the only instance I can ever think of something like that happen. There's actually a lot of people on Reddit that were, and it actually, this kind of went viral, not as viral as the video of him getting the kick and then all of a sudden seeing it rolled. But there's actually video of him Embedded where a lot of people criticized him on, I think it was the 5th episode of the Embedded, where he was getting in and out of the ring and he was gingerly moving on his leg. And a lot of people were saying it looked like he had hurt his leg. And this was before the fight happened. They were saying it when the episode aired and that it looked like his leg was messed up. So either way, I know I'm in the minority on this one. I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, and I'm okay with you disagreeing with me. I'm not saying I'm 100% right. But either way, I see that as a fluke. If you see thousands upon thousands, I mean, literally like hundreds of thousands of leg kicks in a year, or maybe a year is a little bit too much, but over the span of watching fights and nothing like that ever happens, then that's a fluke. That just doesn't happen that often. I don't care how well targeted. I think if a fighter could do that, they would do that every single time. I do see that as a fluke. So to answer your question, Jesse, I do think that he does still have that potential. The question, is he too brittle in the same kind of cruise way? And I don't mean brittle in an offensive way. I mean, just honestly, if he gets injured a lot, that's just the only word that I can think of to describe it. If he's getting injured a lot, then that raises more questions of concern on my end. Then does he have the talent? I do think he has the talent to at least be a top guy. I don't know if he's necessarily a champion. I'm cautious on his prospect abilities, but I do think he has at least the ability to be top 10 or top 5. I just can't look at a leg kick like that and just say that is anything but a fluke, just because it just doesn't happen. It happens very, 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 very rarely. We're only looking at exception cases here. I can literally only think of those 2 fights right now, and you guys might have other ones that you brought up in the chat already, and then I'll get to you in a minute. But I can only think of 2 other times. Cejudo, Michael Chandler, but Michael Chandler rolled his ankle. And neither of them left on a stretcher screaming while holding their leg, I think he has the ability, I don't know if the hype is, I think the hype is dead for a lot of other people. I'll say that. I don't know if the hype is dead for me. I'm never on the extreme end. I was never like, he's the next champion. I didn't think he should have fought Cody Garbrandt. I thought he should have worked his way up the ladder. And I thought Marlon Vera was a perfect next step for him, a real true test to somebody that can actually beat him and put a hurting on him. And he did on the ground, A lot of people have called that a good stoppage. So, Brother Man, what do you think of the state of WMMA? Do you think WMMA will have a strong future? Yes, when you look at 115, when you look at 125, I think those are the real exciting divisions right now. 125 is a little bit light, but if you guys watched the Contender Series last night, I don't know why her last name is pronounced Bays instead of Buys. What was her first name? Cheyenne Bays was her name. She just put on an incredible performance last night. Really looks good, really sharp on the feet, really strong, dominated the fight on the ground as well. I think those are the kind of fighters that we're starting to see come up, and that's just one example, of course. You could probably name, any other ones on top of that. But I think 115 is particularly exciting. We just have so many good matchups there. Of course, we've got what we just saw between Joanna and Zhang there. That's the best fight. So if we're looking at 2020, we just saw the best fight in WMMA history, one of the best fights, let alone in MMA, period. That's my fight of the year right now so far. The fight of the year just happened this year. So I think 115 looks great. And I think that there are a lot of contenders there, and it looks like Rose is going to be up next for the title. She didn't necessarily look like a title challenger to Zhang because that fight was so close with Andrade. She was definitely losing that 3rd round handedly. The first 2 rounds she did win, but I think that fight looks good. I think there are more contenders continually popping up at 115. I think that's the most exciting women's division. I think it looks good there. I think Valentina has got a lot of really great things going on. It is harder to find her challengers, but I think, I think it's exciting watching her doing what she's doing. And you can't sleep on Amanda Nunes. The only problem is just finding her any challenger at this point, So we'll see what happens. And then there's always that fight down the line between those two, Okay. Great question though. I think it has a strong future, particularly at 115. And I think the other divisions, every division goes through lulls and they'll catch back up eventually. Vice Marshal Barnacle. I don't know what that means, but I appreciate the $5 super chat. Do you think Sugar Sean can sustain a career at 135 with his height, or is he a freak like Holloway? Can sustain a career. So you think he's cutting too much weight? Is that kind of the worry that you have there? Yeah, I think he can. I think he's a freak like Holloway in the sense that Holloway does make weight at 145 and is just super tall for the division. So I actually do see them comparable. I'm not sure. For me, I'm seeing those as the same option. Your or, I'm seeing either or is the same kind of thing being said there. So I'm not sure if I'm understanding you correctly. But I agree that that he makes weight well and he looks good at 135 in a freakish way like Holloway. So I would agree with that sentiment myself. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate you. And I guess the real question is, and when you talk about sustaining his career, the real question is, can he avoid injuries? Is his career going to look like Dominic Cruz? And Dominic Cruz passed his career with an A+. I still would put him as the greatest bantamweight of all time because of what he did not only in the UFC but the WEC, has wins over Demetrius Johnson, Uriah Faber, came back and beat TJ Dillashaw, which is just insane after only the Takeya Mizugaki fight in 3 years. Just madness. That's my greatest of all time. And I think there are guys like Jan that can, approach that. And I think that Triple C had the opportunity. Cejudo had the opportunity, but I think he's going for money fights right now. I don't think he really retired at all. It's no secret that he's been calling out every fighter under the sun, boxers, anybody he can think of, I give that to, personally, I give that to, I don't know. We'll just have to see what happens. But okay, Alex Flores, thoughts on Darren Till? He's lost his last 3 out of 4. I thought he looked competitive in the Robert Whittaker fight. I thought it was a good fight. It doesn't make him look the best for necessarily the title picture right now. I think we'll need to see a couple more wins, but I think it shows that he's at the top of the division. For him to put on a close fight against Robert Whittaker, I thought it was impressive. I thought it was something that he earned. Every bit of that fight, every round, he knocked him down in the first round. I thought he earned every bit of his status, saying that he's at least, I think, in the top 5 right now. Is he going to beat Yoel Romero? I don't know if I pick many people against Yoel Romero. It was an extremely close fight against Izzy, and I actually thought Yoel beat Robert Whittaker in the second fight. He missed weight for that. He was kind of the boogeyman. He was the villain of that fight for missing weight 2 times in a row, also missing against Luke Rockhold. But Yoel is the number 2 in the division. I mean, you can argue that he beat Costa as well. Yoel has been the victim of really close decisions where, fans are split on it, people talk about that with, they talk about that with Jorge Masvidal all the time, how he has all these split decision losses that you can argue he won. I think Yoel's got him worse, to be honest with you. But Darren Till, he's in at least the top 5. I think it shows that he's a top 5 to put on that kind of performance, a really, really close fight. I would argue he won at least the 5th and for sure the 1st, and that would give me 2 out of, 2 versus 3 rounds. That's a close fight. That's really, really close if you ask me. So, I think he's got prospects there in the top 5. Appreciate you, Alex. Thank you. Hassani Barry Armstrong. Wow, that is a crazy combination of names. Please tell me that's your actual name. It's Hassani, and then your middle name's just Barry out of nowhere. $4.99 super chat. Speaking of WMMA, can you guys please mention in every video that Valentina is unofficially 2-0 against Nunes? Big fan, by the way, man. Appreciate you, Hassani. Unofficially, so you took her in both of those fights. Is that what you're saying? I think, without question, Amanda Nunes won the second fight. It was just that they ran out of rounds. It's similar to the Andrade fight with Rose Namajunas, where she took over in the third without question. She was starting to dominate Amanda Nunes in the third round of their first fight. And the second fight was really close. Fans were really split on Amanda Nunes versus Valentina Shevchenko 2. I did personally score the fight for Amanda Nunes. I thought it was close enough to where I can see where people make the argument for Valentina, but it was just enough for me and Amanda Nunes in the second fight. So I get what you're saying, but yeah, the only fight that I would say that you could say she's unofficially, got a win over would be the second fight. So 1-1, maybe we'll split the difference and we can say 1-1 there. And that's where some of this, intrigue comes from. Gabriel Sajad, Paige Van Zandt is about to become reigning champ of bare knuckle. How weird is that, right? Like, you've literally got the most beautiful girl probably to ever go into MMA. And, I don't care what anybody says. It's true. I know people don't necessarily want me to comment on her appearance, but it is true. She's very attractive. It's just the fact of the matter. And then here she is going over to bare knuckle boxing. Like, what the fuck? What happened? I don't think that she's going to be necessarily competitive there. I think she'll probably have, a half win ratio. She'll bat 500 there. She'll win half of her fights and lose half of her fights. I don't think she'll do anything particularly good there, but she will be a draw for them. There's just no doubt about it. People want to see kind of this beauty queen jump into bare knuckle boxing and see her getting these crazy fights that just almost defy logic. I don't think she's going to do anything impressive there win-wise. I just think she'll bring names. I mean, it's kind of like Artem Lobov. I mean, let's be honest, like Artem Lobov, he has all the jokes about being the greatest of all time because he's very much not the greatest of all time. That's the whole joke. That's the whole Artem Lobov is the greatest fighter of all time joke. He had one of the poorest records. We even made a video about this inspired by him. I can't remember what his record was when he left the UFC, but his record was just bad. It was just really, really bad. It's one of the worst, especially on the male side. There were definitely some in the developing divisions on the female side of things where, yes, records are worse. Where you have somebody like a 5-6 record on the women's side. And I can't necessarily remember the names. That was like 2 years ago that I made that video. But those are the names that are drawing in bare knuckle boxing. People, it's almost like, I don't want to say freak show fights, but kind of the freak show fights. I mean, Paulie Malignaggi, in what world does it make sense to have Paulie Malignaggi versus Artem Lobov fighting each other? And he was retired, by the way, and to his credit, Artem Lobov beat him, or Hick Diaz, You're seeing some weird fights out there. I personally, it's not my thing. I don't think it's the best of boxing. I don't think it's the best of MMA. I don't think it's the best of any one martial art. I think it's just kind of gruesome fights for the sake of gruesome fights. I don't really necessarily watch MMA. So one of these parts might say it's gruesome violence. Don't you like gruesome violence? That's why you watch MMA. No. Like, gruesome violence is a part of MMA. The thing that's attractive to me about MMA is I'm seeing the best fighters on the planet, period, fight each other. Like back in the day when you saw the original tournament, that was the whole concept. Let's get people from Taekwondo, sumo wrestling, and not the kind of sumo wrestling that Nate Diaz apparently used on Conor McGregor. Let's get people from karate. Let's get people from wrestling eventually became a part of it. BJJ, like Savat, all these different disciplines come together, and let's see who the best fighter is on the planet, period. They did try to find boxers. They got Art Jimerson. They didn't necessarily get the best boxers. But that was the whole point from the beginning, is to say who's the best fighter on the planet. Bare knuckle boxing is nothing in any of those categories. It's just who's the toughest kind of person, and I can appreciate that. I can respect that, but it's not necessarily appealing to me. I don't want to see someone get fucked up for the sake of getting fucked up. So there's a reason why I would prefer a UFC fight over a street fight. Yes, someone's going to get fucked up. Or let's even say this. Let's say, you could probably say this with a fair degree of certainty. The best fight ever has probably happened in local promotion. Like, just think about that. Like, how many local promotions put on fights throughout a year, as opposed to the UFC, as opposed to Pride back in the day, or Ryzen now, or Bellator now? Just how many local promotions have happened, and they have these absolute barn burners that no one ever sees because it's not on national television. The reason why you don't care, and the reason why I don't care enough to be able to know who that fight happened between, is because the stakes aren't there. You don't get to make the claim to say that you're the best fighter on the planet or even the best in your division. You get to say maybe it's upcoming talent, or maybe it's just a slobber knocker, maybe it's just a crazy fight, but you don't really gain anything from it in terms of knowledge about what techniques work the best over the other best techniques on the planet. It's not like seeing, Justin Gaethje versus Khabib, where you're going to see the sambo, the freestyle wrestling, particularly from a Russian flair, go up against the takedown defense of a Justin Gaethje and world-class striking to where he can knock out guys like, Tony Ferguson. He can knock out guys like Vic. He can knock out guys like Cowboy. Top contenders, Edson Barboza. Edson Barboza is one of the most impressive strikers in the UFC's entire history. And there is a difference, I don't think we're necessarily going to say these are the best kickboxers, the boxers, but it's what works in the most realistic version, the truest version of a fight that we see represented on a world-class level. And you just don't get that from bare knuckle boxing. And I think that's the intrigue that is lost for me. And that's why I just don't have any interest in it. And so, yes, Paige Van Zandt will be a draw from them. And she'll get into some bloody, weird-ass fights where you question what is wrong with the world. And some people are really going to enjoy it. But that's my opinion. And your opponent, who do you see as in your opinion, who do you see as a good opponent for a returning Luke Rockhold, says Robert Krebs. Thank you for the $5 super chat. In my mind, I give that Chris Weidman. I think it makes all the sense in the world. They were supposed to rematch at UFC 199. Guess who popped in last minute and just threw a wrench in everything? Michael Bisping, left hook Larry. The rest is history. And Luke Rockhold is no longer champ. Chris Weidman gets knocked out of championship contention after that, and we just never see that rematch. They're kind of in this weird twilight area of their career where it feels like it would still be competitive for both of them, but we're not feeding them to the young like we just saw with, Jan and Reyes. Ironically, they both just got knocked out by both of those guys when they tried their stints at light heavyweight. They both got fed to the young. Right now, we get to see them go up against each other. The Akhmedov fight was pretty impressive from Chris Weidman's show. So it shows that he still can beat some of those, top 15, top 10 level kind of fighters. But yeah, I really like Chris Weidman. I think it makes sense. Alex Flores, $1.99. Who you got? Colby versus Woodley. You're the GOAT, Jason. Thank you, Alex. So I did answer this earlier. People who watch this channel know that I'm not a fan of Colby, but you have to take that aside. I don't care who Colby is outside of the cage. I don't care, how lame his shtick is and he's Tito Ortiz levels of cringe. I'll say it over and over again. I don't care about his politics. I just think he sucks on the mic. I think he sounds nervous. I don't think he's good at promos. I actually hate the fact that we use the word promos because this is a real sport and it's not WWE. Don't get me wrong. I grew up with WWE. I just think sports and WWE aren't the same thing. And people try to bleed them together too much. It's like, I feel like a lot of people that really loved WWE in the 90s and really want the Attitude Era to come back, and they just know it's never going to come back for WWE just because it's in the shithole. They just kind of wish that MMA would become a hybrid of that. I'm probably hitting some people in the gut by saying that right now, but I think it's the truth. I don't like Colby's shtick. I've seen other guys, we've got Ben Askren. He's a Trump supporter. I don't give a fuck. We got, Jorge Masvidal wearing a MAGA hat. I don't give a fuck who you support. I care about how you fight in MMA. And if you're going to talk shit, be good at it at least. Conor was good at it. Askren was really good at it. Chael Sonnen was really good at it. Anybody else from that ilk, I can say they're really good at it. I just think Colby sucks balls at it and he insults dead people, which is not cool. So that aside, my opinion on Colby. This is not me, because people will accuse me of this. This is not me siding with Colby because I like Colby. I very much do not. Demonstrably do not like Colby's shtick. Is he a good fighter, though? 100%. And I actually think he's going to win this fight. I think he's going to take it to Woodley, and the version that we've seen of Woodley has not looked great. Who knows? He might come back super motivated. He might have his wrestling on point, ready to handle the takedowns of Colby and the smothering pace on the feet. I don't think that Colby has knockout pace. He did wobble Usman a couple times in their fight. He's got a lot of potential on the feet. But, it's Woodley that has the knockout power. So if he can bring that into the equation, if he can be on par on the feet, at least to land one shot. I mean, he's in that league of power. He almost finished Darren Till on the feet and then submitted him on the ground. He devastated Josh Koscheck in one of his early fights. Jeez, one of the best finishes. Of course, Robbie Lawler just decked him with one shot. That's the kind of power that Woodley has, and that's the kind of advantage that he could have on the feet. He could get outboxed 10-1 with Colby, but the version that we've seen of Woodley lately, I would have picked Woodley a couple years ago, but I think the version of Woodley, it's questionable where his motivation is at 38 years old, already won a title. Colby is hungry as hell, feels like he was robbed of his last decision, his stoppage, and that he felt that he would have won the decision. That's where Colby's at. I feel like Colby's hungry. He is ready to get that title, and that this is one of his true rivals on the way to getting another title shot. I think Colby's going to come out hungry. I think he's going to come out with fire, and I think that we're going to see Colby win this one. Man, you guys are absolutely killing it. You guys are awesome. Ashat Mutha says, Jason from MMA on Point, see you soon, boy. Appreciate you. I don't know. I just throwing out that YOL for no reason. El Laliette says, trash talk is okay as long as fighters can back it up and don't cross borders with it, which I do feel Colby did. I mean, like, I've said this a million times. If you insult, like, if my dad died and you insulted him for the sake of promotion, which is exactly what he did with Usman's coach, and his daughters were literally going to the press to say, don't use our father's death to promote your fucking fight, asshole. Dude, like, that is despicable shit. Like, I don't give a fuck how much you love entertainment. If that happened to your dad, you would hate Colby for the rest of your life. There would be almost nothing that dude could do to get your respect back. You would have to be an incredibly gracious person to forgive that dude. To even forgive that dude, let alone be cool with that guy. That is so not cool. That is crossing borders. And I do believe in bad press. People that think that, they just buy into cliches and they don't think for themselves. If that's the line that you're going to use. Talking about him poorly is bad press. It absolutely is. The whole MAGA jaw thing was not good press. And do I agree with that? Do I think we should be gloating on someone's jaw being broken? No, I don't think so. I do think it is a bit of poetic justice for somebody who talked a lot to have their jaw broken. Sure. But, you know, that's people trying to wrench in the politics in the same way that he did. I don't like it the other way either. But anyhow, Lily Flynn, $5.99. How do you see Silva finishing his career? Well, Vanderlei's still fighting. I don't assume you mean Vanderlei. I assume that you mean Anderson Silva. So speaking of Luke Rockhold, that would be another great fight for him. I think, you know, he does one or two fights. You know, maybe he fights Chris Weidman again because let's face it, you know, Chris Weidman did everything right in those fights. He's the one who checked the leg kick, broke his leg. But it is a bit of a fluke, you know. Like I said, I can only think of one other fighter, that being Pele, that broke his leg in a similar way. Just shin bone just snaps in half, you know. I think that fight would be fun to run back, and let's see how that goes. No showboating this time where he gets knocked out in the middle of a showboat. No checked leg kick that turns into a broken bone. That would be fun. And then Luke Rockhold would be another fun fight just because people talked about for so long. I know they're talking about trying to do Uriah Hall again because that's a fight that people have wanted for so long. I think that would be a real fun fight. A technical striker's dream matchup for the division. Even though we're not necessarily seeing Anderson Silva at the top of his game, he still looks good against Israel Adesanya, who is literally the champion right now. So that's what I like to see right now, and I think that's a great question. It's one of those fights. It's probably Chris Weidman or Luke Rockhold, maybe the winner of those two, or Uriah Hall, I guess, would be the third option. Man, you guys are killing it. You guys are awesome.
We did skip the super chat, by the way.
Okay. Armenian Jiu-Jitsu, was that who it was from?
From Hugh.
Oh, from Hugh, okay. Where am I? Oh, huge.
Yeah,
I got halfway through it.
I was like, it's from Hugh. That's about all I'm going to say.
I don't give a fuck. It's YouTube. His name's Huge Rection. Huge G Rection is what it is. Obviously, we're talking about boners here. By the way, we're sponsored today by Cialis. Of course, we're not. But I appreciate the super chat, and I don't give a fuck that you made the joke. If Jones beats Stipe and Reyes, wins his fight... Wait. Oh, if Jones beats Stipe and Reyes wins his fight, then Jones rematches Reyes and wins... Do you think they have Jones fight Izzy for first triple belt? Well, the problem is I don't think Jones can get down to middleweight. What would happen is Izzy would go up to light heavyweight, and so it would be a double belt opportunity for him if that sequence played out to where Jones wins at heavyweight and then goes back down to light heavyweight and recaptures the title from Reyes in the situation that you laid out. So it wouldn't be a triple belt. He would beat a reigning champion, but There's no way John Jones is making it down, especially if he bulks up like he's been talking about to go up to heavyweight. It would be hard for him to go back down to light heavyweight after that. There's just no way that fight would take place at middleweight. It would take place at light heavyweight. But great question. I like that sequence. I do like that because we desperately need to see him fight Reyes again. So if Reyes can beat Jan, then it sets up that rematch. Maybe in between he can fight Thiago Santos. But here's the problem. If Jones goes up, beats Stipe, and Ngannou doesn't get the title shot first, then he's got to fight Ngannou. Like, Ngannou can't be denied. Like, can you imagine being Ngannou and having to take another fight? Another fight after all he's been through in the past couple of years? Like I said, back with Kane, people thought he was going to get a title shot after that. Then he fought Blades. Then he's fought Rosenstruck. And I might even be missing one. For some reason, I feel like I'm missing one in between there. But he's basically taken 2 fights already past the time that people expected him to fight for a title. It would just be a travesty if the guy did not get a title fight. And who knows, maybe Jones could go back down and then he could, take another fight. But what is he supposed to do now if Jones fights Stipe? He's supposed to take more time off? He's ready to fight now. He could fight Jones next month. He could fight him next week. He could fight Stipe next week. We just need to see Stipe recover because he obviously had to have a 5-round title affair. So, yeah, the way I see this one, it could go in that sequence. The problem is what you would do with Ngannou if Jones goes up to heavyweight. I feel like Jones has at least 2 fights up there. And if he can manage to get through that gauntlet, which is just insane, if he beats Stipe and Ngannou, Christ, what are we talking about with John Jones and the GOAT discussion at that point? That's just insane. And DC got himself into the discussion even having lost to John Jones by beating Stipe. That's the power of beating Stipe. Stipe is a huge name, has a huge legacy, and now has 2 wins over DC, which is just massive. And then also beats Ngannou. It's just unreal for Jones to do that. I would be thoroughly, thoroughly, thoroughly impressed. So if he can do that, then go down and face Reyes, then yeah, fuck it. Let's go and just give him Izzy. But Izzy's going to have to come up at that point. And the question is, can he get through Costa? Can he get through, who knows, maybe he'll fight Yoel again, or he's got Whitaker versus Cannonier after that. He's got Jack Hermanson in the wings. There's a lot of people at middleweight that he needs to get through in that amount of time. So we're talking, I would say 3 fights, which is probably going to happen over the course of 2 years. So what does Izzy look after 2 years? What does Jones look after 2 years? I would probably take Jones in that. I mean, it just really depends. If Jones can get through Stipe and Ngannou and then Reyes, then I would have a really hard time giving Izzy that win if he went up to light heavyweight, being the smaller guy, So great question. I think it's a fun matchup, and I appreciate your erection. Thank you, huge G-erection. Huge G-erection. I'm saying it to 2 combined. Yeah, I don't give a fuck if you guys troll me with your names. I don't give a fuck. This is YouTube. Favorite Nicktoon, Jason, says Armenian Jiu-Jitsu. Dude, you are the Twitch OG. Dude, we got to go with Doug. You got to go with Doug. I'm a 90s kid. Hey Arnold's probably a close favorite. And then Rugrats. Anybody give a fuck about this at all? All right, so we're about to wrap it up. We've got a couple more super chats. You guys are just totally knocking out of the park today. It's probably the best day we've ever had with super chats, period. So I'm going to make it through. So please, I just want to let you guys know, don't throw any more super chats in after Kingslayer Damocles. I'll get to his, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. Really, really, really appreciate you guys. So Breathing Nerddom gives $5. Appreciate you, brother. Covington sounds like someone who picked up a Chelsonen book, read the back, and read the back. Yes, I agree with that. He didn't necessarily get it all down. Did Anderson Silva leave 205 early considering he'd be... Wait. Did Anderson leave 205 early considering he'd be the 2nd or 3rd in line? I'm not sure what he means by that. Anderson leaving 205. He left 205. Do you mean 185? I'm not sure what you mean there. I'm sorry. Because he left 205 after Forrest Griffin a long time ago. Considering he'd be 2nd or 3rd in line. Are you saying if he did fight for the belt there and win there, he'd be 2nd or 3rd in the GOAT discussion? Is that what you mean? Like he'd be right behind GSP? You could make that argument. I mean, it's between John Jones and GSP. I think most people are going to argue GSP is number 1. And then you could argue it's a toss-up between Anderson and John Jones for that. I personally had John Jones at number 1 on my list. I know that's hyper controversial, so take that for what you will. But yeah, maybe he would be, number 2 or something like that if he actually won there. He did beat a former champion. He did beat Forrest Griffin. Did he say anything?
Armenian said that he left 205 when he fought DC. I don't know if you talked about that again or not.
Oh, so he fought him for a one-off. It's basically the equivalent of a catchweight fight. He did 205 on 3 days' notice after John Jones tested positive for steroids. So he never really went to 205. He just had a one-off fight there. Whereas I would say he went to 205 when he fought James Irvin and Forrest Griffin because he was testing the waters there a whole lot more. I guess I kind of see what you're saying, but yeah, I think it was too far away to really kind of consider anything serious off that. If he beat DC, that would have been huge.
Breathing did just comment. He said he met Corey Anderson.
Corey Anderson. Okay. Jesus Christ. I don't know why I assumed Anderson Silva there. I guess it's almost like I think of his name as a package deal. So did Anderson leave 205 early considering he'd be a second or third in line? Okay. So you're talking about him leaving for Bellator. Okay. Reasonable question. I probably should have thought Corey Anderson first. Not sure where I thought Anderson Silva. Maybe it's because we've been talking about Anderson Silva today. Doesn't matter. I don't think he. I think he is smart going to Bellator because Bellator is going to pay him. The UFC hasn't necessarily taken care of him. He was arguing that he should have got a title fight after Johnny Walker. I kind of disagree. So I'm kind of on the in between here. I don't think Corey Anderson really deserved the title shot when he thought he should have gotten it. I think the Johnny Walker made a much better case for him, but should have Johnny Walker gotten a title shot, especially in hindsight? The answer is resounding no. He should have not gotten a title fight when he was, maybe touted to one. This was when Dominic Reyes was also fighting Chris Weidman, and that's what they gave him the title shot off. It was kind of this competition between who has the more impressive finish. Corey Anderson, even though he knocked out Johnny Walker, just didn't have a lot of hype behind him. I understand why he's going to Bellator, and I think it's the best move he could have made because I don't see him as being a champion. I think Jan pretty resoundingly knocked him out of there. OSP is somebody who's knocked him out with a head kick in the past. I just don't see Corey Anderson as being a true light heavyweight championship threat. And who knows, MMA is crazy. He did knock out Johnny Walker, and he's always been a wrestler, smothering style the rest of his career. So anything is possible. I think Bellator is the right calculated move for him because they're going to pay him. I think it would be a good fight against Bader. I think he has a chance there. So, we'll see what happens this weekend, by the way, with Nemkov. We'll see what happens. I think that's a good matchup where Nemkov actually does have a chance. So we'll see. The winner of that could fight Corey Anderson. I think it's a great move by Corey Anderson. I don't see him winning a title in the UFC. So, yes, he might have been up there, but I think Bellator is going to pay him because they need names. They need stars. Even though he's not the biggest star, it's a name for them, and it helps legitimize their division. If Bader beats him or if he becomes champion, at least it shows that they got some top 5 ability from the UFC up in there. You could definitely argue Bader is top 5 in the UFC if you went back to light heavyweight there. Not heavyweight, though. Maybe heavyweight. That's a stretch. But yeah, great question. I'm sorry, I totally misunderstood it at first. And I agree. Covington read the back of Chael Sonnen's book and just totally missed the point. Last one, how much does Stipe have left? He's 38. I give him 2 or 3 more years. That's what I give him. I say he gets through, it really just depends, though. If he gets knocked out wildly by Ngannou in the first round, just gets starched in like 38 seconds, and then he fights Rosenstruck and the same thing happens. If he has 2 devastating losses back-to-back, we might see him retire then. But if he can get through Ngannou, I think that's going to increase his longevity a bit. And if he can get through John Jones, I think that's going to increase his longevity. I say let's give him 4 or 5 more fights over the course of 2 to 3 more years, and I say that's probably where it ends up being. We rarely see people retire on top. I would argue that we are seeing DC retire on top in the sense that he literally fought for a title. He didn't win, but to say he was literally the top guy in his division, the number 1 contender in his division is, I would say that's leaving on top for my book. It's not the traditional sense of being champion, but we rarely see somebody leave even at DC's level, much less GSP's level of literally being champion at middleweight. So yeah, we'll have to see there. I don't know if Stipe will necessarily be there, but if he can hold on for 2 or 3 more years, I mean, that would just be incredible, you know? So 2 or 3 more years, that's what I give him. Great question, Alex. The beta alpha, both at the same time. How do you see Sean O'Malley will handle the loss he took? I think we'll see him take more time off. Obviously, he was just trying to take as many fights as possible, and obviously, there's a reason why fighters take time off, and they don't fight once every month, once every 2 months. So, yeah, he's in a recovery period, I think. I think we won't see him fight again in 2020. I'll make that prediction. I think we'll see him back in 2021. We'll say first quarter, maybe in the spring, somewhere around there. Hang on. Woo, felt that one coming. Yeah, so I think he's got, this is where I see Sean O'Malley right now. I see him as top 10, possibly top 5. I don't want to predict any more beyond that, but if he can be healthy and he can go into a fight, then I think he's got the opportunity to be there. And I would like to see him rematch Marlon Vera. I think Marlon Vera earns the opportunity to fight somebody else. But, you know, I would like to see that rematch happen at some point. Great question. Vice Marshall Barnacle. He's back. $5. What's next for Dustin Poirier? Is he already in title contention, or does he need 1 to 2 more wins? And would he have a chance in a rematch with Khabib? Yeah, so I think the Tony Ferguson fight, 100%. This is what I was talking about earlier. I think they should put it as the co-main event to set up the number 1 contender simultaneously while defining who their current champion is going to be with the winner of Justin Gaethje and Khabib. So that's in October, UFC 254. I think they set it up then. I think that's the matchup that makes the most sense. Tony Ferguson has deserved it, having a 12-fight unbeaten streak before Justin Gaethje, and he did have 2 weight cuts, so let's cut him some slack. And I think Justin Gaethje proved that he was the better man on that night and deserved the win by all means. But, you know, he did put his body through hell, and let's see what he looks like not going through 2 weight cuts back-to-back. Even Justin Gaethje was like, oh, man, yeah, I would have never done that. He strictly advised against what Tony Ferguson did, weighing in on April 18th, even though there was no fight, just for his own kind of mental endurance and just to make a statement that he was ready on that day and he would have showed up, which you have to respect about Tony Ferguson. But, you know, let's see what it looks like when he's fully healthy going to a fight. No questions are against a Justin Gaethje in a rematch or Khabib, because God knows we've got to see that fight happen. So that's what I say. Let's go ahead and make that fight the co-main event. Dustin Poirier versus Tony Ferguson, number 1 contenders match for the lightweight title. And let's see who wins between Khabib and Justin Gaethje, and that's who they fight next. So I love that. And would Poirier have a chance against Khabib in the rematch? To be fair, man, like, I rewatched that again the other day. That submission was so close. He got him in that guillotine choke. I don't care what anybody says. I think there are some Khabib stands out there that just don't want to admit that that was a close submission. And I'm not saying that it's only Khabib stands, but I don't see how you look at that submission. He was almost in that guillotine attempt for a full minute, and it was really, 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 really tight. If he could have got him to full guard, I think we would have seen an either unconscious or tapping Khabib in that situation. It was a pretty close fight, and he's the person I would argue who actually rocked him more even than Michael Johnson did. So I think he did pretty good in the fight. I still think that Khabib mostly dominated, but considering, if you look at that, who has the most competitive fight with him since who's the one that stuffed all of his takedowns back in the day? I'm having a mind freeze here. Was it Gleison Tebow? Gleison Tebow, I believe, was the one that stuffed all of Nurmagomedov's. Of course, he tested positive for steroids right after it. I believe it was Gleison Tebow. See what the comments say on that one. If someone pops in with Gleison Tebow, because I believe that's who it was. It was, or was it? No, it wasn't Abel Trujillo. Yeah, it was Gleison Tebow. Yeah. So that was the closest fight that he ever had in his career. So that's going back to 2012. So the closest fight in 8 years is Dustin Poirier. So I think you've got to give Dustin Poirier a lot of slack there. I think you need to give him some credit and say that, yeah, if he beats Tony Ferguson, give him another title shot. And Tony Ferguson being on a 12-fight unbeaten streak and everything that he did, just going through everybody, taking all the short notice fights. And, mind you, Justin Gaethje was a short notice fight. April 18th, he was supposed to fight Khabib. And then a month later, he's fighting Justin Gaethje. And he was willing to fight Justin Gaethje on that night. And that's part of the reason why he's still weighed in. just to kind of say that he was ready for that. So I think either of them earns it 100%. Conor McGregor, if you want to come back and fight somebody, let's get 2 more wins for Conor McGregor before anybody brings him up. All right, so Kingslayer Damocles, this is the last comment I'll go off of. You guys are absolute legends. Appreciate that. If that happened to my dad, I'd probably laugh. Oh, wow, that's like the worst comment to leave on. Kingslayer Damocles, what are you talking about? If that happened to your dad, I'd probably laugh. Are you talking about the dad bod of DC or something?
No,
that'd be kind of fucked up.
I think that comment happened when Colby was.
When Colby, dude, you would not laugh. Fuck off, Kingslayer. Yeah, this is so funny. He just made fun of my dad's heart attack. Great, good one. Let's get back for some more Death Gut Busters. Death Gut Busters. Yeah, actually kind of hard to say. It's like better in your minds. But yeah, let's come back for some more Death Gut Busters next week when you make fun of my dying grandpa. Great one. But anyhow, really appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. I really appreciate it. I know I didn't get to that many regular comments. I usually try to do that because I don't want to make it all about that. But I mean, I got to, put the respect where it's due when people are actually paying and supporting the channel. Really, really thoroughly appreciate you guys. You guys have been awesome. Really looking forward to the fights this weekend. So let's do my quick predictions. Pedro Munhoz versus Frankie Edgar. I've got Frankie Edgar winning that one. I think it's the boxing that'll get it done on the feet. I think it'll be elusive. I think he'll be fast. I think Pedro Munhoz is going to look good. He's ranked number 5 for a reason. Ovince St. Preux versus Alonzo Menefield. Man, I think we're going to see another Von Preux choke. OSP has just totally stolen Jason Von Flew's choke from him. I think we'll see another one there. And then just jumping to Bellator. So we didn't pull up the card for that. By the way, actually, so while you've got it on screen, Daniel Rodriguez versus Takashi Sato is my undercard, or under the radar, not undercard. This is on the main card. It's my under the radar fight of this card. Daniel Rodriguez always goes for the knockout. Takashi Sato gets into wildfire fights as well, and he's also good on the ground. I think that's a potential fight of the night honor right there. So I'm looking forward to that one. Watch it be boring now that I've said that. And then jumping over to Bellator, we've got Ryan Bader going up against Vadim Nemkov. So you don't have it pulled up. It's fine. I've got Ryan Bader probably winning that one, although I do give Nemkov the potential to win that fight. So those are my predictions for those. At least we got a chance to talk about it. Just unbelievably stoked about the cards. I mean, we are getting spoiled with great fights through September, the rest of this month, and October. We got some really great fights coming up. Really happy to talk to you guys about it. Armenian Jiu-Jitsu says he loves me. Let's go and give him the Yamasaki. There we go. It's the worst. But so let's see you guys at 7 p.m. Join us on Twitch tonight. Max Randall, Mac Malley, and then we'll be back again tomorrow. We're going to do a special video game episode, which I have done so much research into. I'm unbelievably stoked to release this video. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. That will be 1 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. tonight, and 5 p.m. on Friday. And we normally stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So join us on Twitch, twitch.tv/MMA on point. Appreciate you guys. You guys have a great day. Thank you so much for the super chats. And we'll see you on the next video. Peace out, guys. Oh.